Going to spend approximately half an hour, a little something out of time here. We're going to go over some of my insights, my experience, what my journey's been with 3D printing, and how this ties into digital dentistry. It's real exciting for us, because especially with how fast 3D printing is evolving in digital dentistry, and just in the fields of engineering alone. It's incredible how well we're able to apply these new techniques and procedures all through the advances in 3D printing. So today I want to spend some time, we'll talk about some digital dentistry and where we are with just digital dentistry in general in 2021. We'll speak in depth about some 3D printing in dentistry, and hopefully it helps to connect the dots about how we use it in medicine, and also hopefully to maybe gain some inspiration into how you can, pursue a passion with technology and in medicine. So I practice on Long Island. This is my team here. My sister is to the left of me, Dr. Barbara Jerem. We practice together, and we also teach together at Touro College of Dental Medicine. And we grew up in the background of the dental laboratory industry, where we were able to see how restorations got made for patients, and also how dentists would apply the techniques available in clinical dentistry. So we have a facility where we try to encompass all these different parts of technology. Speaking of technology, my background actually was with computer systems and electrical engineering. So I've always loved technology. This was actually something I was building in dental school, which you see here on the screen. I did graduate, luckily, from dental school in 2008, but I never left my engineering behind. In fact, this was my desk in dental school. So it's a passion of mine, and I like to, like I say, connect the dots and how we can apply all these new techniques and use the new tools available to us in dentistry to really enhance the patient experience and the care. At Touro College of Dental Medicine, where I'm the director of digital dentistry, we've really taken this to the next level, and how we apply the latest advancements in technology with the clinical care we provide. So here's a quick overview of New York Medical College, where we are located here at Touro College of Dental Medicine. And right across the way from us is actually our IT team that focuses on putting together and connecting a lot of the dots to the digital systems that we use. And actually, all of our information is set up in the special data access station here called TierPoint. And this is where our data center is, where we actually keep all of our very unique, expensive tools that allow us to process digital dentistry in a different way. These are some of the techniques and tools that we use here. These are called intraoral scanners. Now, normally I speak and I talk to a lot of different dentists about the techniques and process of digital dentistry. I know our audience today are not dentists, so if there is something that's unclear, virtually raise your hand, and I'm more than happy to try to explain the best I can. These wands that you see here are intraoral scanners. We actually use them to help digitize our patients. And a lot of what we do is focused on that process of digitizing your patients. Touro College of Dental Medicine, where we provide the latest, greatest care under this new environment that's available to us. A lot has changed with COVID. You can see on the right how the protocols have changed. And, interestingly enough, for example, for the time that we were off due to COVID, we needed to come up with some solutions. And here are some solutions. We actually used our 3D printers in our environment. So we had to create head shields. So what you see here is an actual scan of my face that I did with my iPhone. And if I turn the color off, what you see in gray is actually a head shield that we designed, that we then printed on our 3D printers at the school. Here's it actually me printing the prototypes in my basement during the pandemic. And this allowed us to not rely on external suppliers for PPE. And we were able to produce these, print them in-house at the dental school. And it's really cool that we're just able to use 3D printing technology as well for applications outside of just dentistry per se. Here's another project I was working on. This is a custom face mask that we actually designed. I designed this again in my basement during the pandemic. You can see we scan the face. This adapts perfectly to my face. This was a prototype I was designing. And then once the design is complete, like you see here, I then printed a prototype of that on 3D printer in my basement. And once that was okay, kind of looks like a little pig nose there. We then printed it. I then printed it in a different material. This is a soft rubber-like material. So there's a lot of different materials that we can use in printing. But a lot of cool, a lot of fun stuff in it, just how we're able to apply all these different parts. I always like to say that the digital ecosystem, especially for digital dentistry, is all these different parts that we have available to us now as technology has really, become very persuasive in medicine. So let's take a step back and let's try to better understand what we're actually talking about when we talk about digital dentistry. And I hope this helps clarify just how and where this falls into the actual clinical care that we provide. So digital dentistry is really broken down into this process of inputting information, processing, and then outputting it in one way or another. And out of all these tools that we have here, these are a lot of our input tools. These are how we can digitize our patients. So if you see on the left is an intraoral scanner, we have camera systems where we take traditional photography, and all the way on the right, that's a 3D X-ray machine. It allows us to see through the bone, through the gum tissue, and actually take a 3D X-ray of a patient's jaw that we use for implant planning, amongst other indications. Here's what it actually looks like. This is my private office. This is how we actually take and digitize our patients with an intraoral scanner. So the process is pretty quick and simple. What we'll do is we'll actually use that wand, and that wand will create a 3D model of our patient in real time. And that 3D model that we're generating is all generated by the scanner using light, not using X-rays. And it allows us to immediately digitize our patient. Now, once we have this digital information on a screen, for example, you see here, this is what the final scans look like. This is a 3D scan of my patient. We need a way where we can actually output this information. Before we output, though, we want to have the processing of the information. And this is really where we could design restorations. We could use the scans and the input data to do analysis of our patients and to help diagnose in medicine and in dentistry so that we can provide better care. But once we've inputted the information and then we've either created a design or we've done an analysis, we need to be able to output that. And this is really where we begin to see our output systems. And primarily, what you see on the screen now are a whole bunch of different machines that we use. The 4 on the right are milling machines, and the one on the left, that's orange, is a 3D printer. And I want to spend some time going through these 2 different outputs because these are really what are the traditional into the new age of how we produce and how we manufacture specific restorations for our patients. Whether we do that in the office or we use a service that creates the restorations for us, these are primarily the 2 major groups of tools that we use. So the machines that do milling, which are on the right-hand side of the screen, they actually start with a solid block of material, and they will cut away at that material until we're left with what we have designed. So that's a subtractive process. We'll actually cut away and keep subtracting from the original block of material till we have what we need. 3D printing, on the other hand, is the opposite. That's where we can actually produce through a process of additive production, where we take a design, the 3D printing software will break it into individual slices. So let's say the design is broken into 500 different slices, and then it prints slice by slice in this resin material, and then out comes our 3D object. So there are 2 differences. Let's take a closer look at the milling part. So if you see on the right-hand side here, what we're actually producing is a restoration. You see that purple block there. That's a crown that's going to be for a patient. So the block is around the size of what any crown can fit inside, and then the machine will use a series of burrs and keep on cutting away until we end up with what we are actually looking to produce. There's a lot of different materials that we have, but you see a theme here that they all use these little blocks and they use these different areas where they get cut away, and we end up with our final restorations. Here's an example of what some of those restorations look like. We have temporary crowns, we have bridges, we have implant crowns. These are specific for the patient, and they have to be incredibly precise. The more precise they are, the better they fit, and the longer they last for the patient. So in dentistry, we've really adopted these machines from other industries in order to help produce and create that level of accuracy that we need in precision. Here's a much bigger machine. This is making an implant bridge for a patient. So this bridge is going to replace all the patient's teeth as it screws into dental implants, which are artificial foundations that have been placed in the patient's jawbone. We turn this one on here. You can see how this machine is in the process of going ahead and creating, through that reduction process, the final sets of teeth that this patient is going to have delivered to them. But again, this is a reductive process. We're actually working in reverse. We look again here, this patient is having 2 new front teeth made for them, right? So they're actually having what are called porcelain veneers. Patient had chips in the teeth and she had existing restorations that needed to be replaced. And so what I do is I go ahead, and this is a very similar technique where we create a design. Here are the 2 restorative designs that are going to be used for the patient. And we design where that's going to fit in those little blocks. And then that will then be sent over to one of the machines. The blocks get loaded, and the machine's going to go ahead and cut away. These are the type of machines that we use at Toro. There's many different brands, but if you have any interest, I say come take a look, and we'd love to share with you and show with you, because the technology is quite amazing on what we're able to provide. So that machine will keep on running through that cycle. This is what we end up with at the end. These are just pictures from both angles. And then that goes through a special furnace where it turns the right color, and then we can deliver those to the patient. So those are the 2 new restorations that are in place. So even though dentistry, a lot of times everyone thinks it has just to do with teeth, there is so much technology behind clinical medicine these days in order to produce very precise and accurate restorations, which in turn will last longer for the patients. And that's what we focus entirely on teaching at Toro, because it's a different mindset in dentistry and how to apply the tools that are available to us and really rethink the way that we treat our patients. It's fundamental. So what we see here is one of the 3D printing systems that we use at Toro as well. This is a Formlabs 3D printer. And the Formlabs printer will take the restoration, we can place it in the software. And once it's in the software, like you see here, these are actually models of patients' teeth that we're going to 3D print. This will then get sent over to the printer wirelessly, and the print will begin its cycle. And slowly, the material will be printed from a vat of resin, and it will create the design. I want to share with you and show you a little bit on how some other types of 3D printers work. So this is called a filament 3D printer. Now, filament 3D printer, you can think of it working as, let's say, a hot glue gun. So there's a solid filament of material. It goes through an extruder tip, it melts it, and as that tip is moving around this bed, it's actually depositing material. There you see the filament being released. It's depositing material, and it's additively building this model in 3D. Now, these types of printers are the most common ones that you may see on eBay and Amazon and the internet. They work with that filament. Some of the other printers that we use, like I showed you before, that Formlabs printer, that Formlabs printer will work with a vat of resin. And so the technology is the same or similar in the sense that it's an additive process. However, it's a little bit different because with the resin printers, we're actually using a laser or a projector underneath that vat of material. So you'll see we're actually printing in reverse. As that build tray that you see is going up and down there slowly, or pretty quickly, I should say, is coming out of the material, we're actually printing each layer one by one in that resin tank at the bottom with the light coming up and shining in and curing the material. So in this case, the Formlabs uses a type of laser. That laser gets redirected around through this vat of material, and it creates layer by layer. Once that layer is done, that tray will raise a little bit and it will begin the next layer. And this is that additive 3D printing process. Let's see here. So here's what it looks like. This is one of the printers that we use in our office. This is the Formlabs Form 2 printer. And so we have a lot of different materials. Like you see over here, we have model material, we have tooth material, tooth colored materials. So we keep our material storage there. The printer is there, the printer will begin the process. Once the printing is complete, we'll then go ahead and we'll actually have to post-process that, which basically means we're gonna run it through these tanks of alcohol. So whatever prints comes out, we clean it in a vat of rubbing alcohol. Once the alcohol is cleaned off the excess uncured resin, it then goes into this machine, which is called a Form Cure. It's like a curing box, and it uses UV light in order to finally harden the material to its final specifications, and then that can be used with the patient. So what are some of the things that we print in dentistry a lot? Well, what you see on the screen now, this is called a surgical guide. Now, patients who are having implants, and implants are artificial roots that are being placed in the patient, artificial foundations, they have to be placed into the jawbone. This allows us, this appliance that we 3D print fits in the patient's mouth, specific to that patient. And these guide holes that you see here on the main part of the 3D printer actually allow the implant surgeon to place the implants in the same position that we virtually planned in their planning software, the software we use to create the surgical guide. So surgical guides are very important in 3D printing. Since 2017, we've actually been working in printing digital dentures as well. So dentures, what you see here in pink is a 3D printed denture. These are actually two different materials, the pink and the tooth colored material, and then those get assembled together. We also design new smiles, digital proposals. I call them digital tooth setups, where in this case, what you see outlined here, this is a new smile for a patient. And we're actually going to show his case a little bit later on, so you can see how we tie all these different parts together. And of course, we use them for 3D printing of implant prosthetics and special, very highly precise restorations that our patients require. So this was that case before where I was showing you how we can do those digital tooth proposals, digital tooth setups. And when you see on the left, as we work our way to the right, this was the steps that we use digital dentistry in order to create this new smile for the patient and end up with a very predictable result. Once we have the right photos and we have the right intraoral scans, again, this is the scan that comes from that wand, doesn't use any x-rays. This is called a surface scan. We're able to align all these different pieces of data, and this is me actually designing the patient's new smile. And I can align all this information. And once we create this design where we can see what it looks like in the patient's face virtually before we ever actually present it to the patient to give us important landmarks, important areas of reference, we'll then take this information and now we need to output this to the real world, right? This is just on a computer screen. And that's where the 3D printing comes in. So here is the design that I produced for the patient's new smile, and we want to test drive that before we do anything permanent to the patient. So what do we do here? Well, we'll actually take a model of this and we will send it to the 3D printer. Now, out of the 3D printer comes what you see here in gray, right? So that is our model that represents all the new tooth design that we put in together for this patient. And as a way for us to test this before we do anything permanent, for example, cut any tooth with a handpiece, what you see in the clear plastic here is a mold I've taken of my 3D setup, my new 3D smile. And with that plastic mold, I can take some material in dentistry that we use to make temporaries, temporary restorations. It's a liquid material, it's fluid. And once we put it in there and exposed to air, it then hardens over a couple minutes. We can load that tray with material, put it in the patient's mouth, wait 5 minutes as it hardens, peel away the plastic part, and actually now preview what this looks like in the patient's mouth. It's a really great technique because it allows us to be more precise. It allows us to test drive before we do anything permanent with the patient, and also improve the quality of dentistry that we do. So here we're doing this virtual smile mock-up and checking it. And again, all of this is in relation to the 3D printers that allow us to output from the screen into the 3D natural world. And that all gets used to dictate how we design and finalize the case like what you see here. So some of the other applications that 3D printing has improved for us is the ability for us to produce appliances for the patient. This is a digital night guard. And once the patient has his new smile in place, this digital night guard then gets 3D manufactured, and that gets delivered to the patient to help protect the restorations while they sleep. Now, we always have 1 or 2 patients a year who call us up and say, oh, I'm sorry, I lost or I left my night guard in the hotel. And in the olden days, we used to have to get the patient back in, take a new impression or mold of their mouth, and by hand make a whole new appliance. Now that we have this information that's kept digitally, in fact, we could even save it in the printer software. We can just go ahead, right back to the printer, and we could hit reprint now, and we'll get the same exact prosthesis or the same exact night guard to be 3D printed. And that's a really interesting part of digital dentistry, that we can take this night guard and we could print it now, we could print it 100 years from now, and it will be the same. That digital information doesn't change over time. They're really cool applications that allow us to have new solutions for some old problems that we've never had great solutions to in the past. A couple photos of how those night guards work, and here is it delivered. So the last thing I want to share today, what am I doing in time there? Okay, yeah, 25 minutes, not bad. Sometimes I can talk pretty fast. Sometimes I got to slow down a little bit. Well, here's a little bit of how we actually create those 3D surgical guides that we use for implant planning. So what you see on the left here is, at least my left, in color, is the surface scan of the patient's teeth. And you see on the right is actually a 3D X-ray of the patient's jaw. Now that 3D X-ray is a model in 3D, just like what the surface scan is, or the scan on the left. And those two then get combined, they get aligned together. And what this allows us to do in digital dentistry is to perform this patient's implant surgery first on a computer screen without having to touch the patient, without having to do anything permanent. And what you see here with these images, this is our virtually planned implant once it's been aligned with the 3D X-ray of the patient's jawbone, with the intraoral scan of the patient's teeth. And this is what we actually produce for this patient. So this is their 3D surgical guide. Now, this is going to fit over the adjacent teeth around the area where the dental implant is going to be placed. And this allows us and allows the implant surgeon to put the implant in the same exact position through a special guide sleeve that you see right there in the center that is then going to dictate the final position of that dental implant. And this prints on the 3D printer here, on one of our form labs. This takes us approximately, maybe I would say 30 to 40 minutes to print and finish. Here's what it looks like. There's the tooth that went on top. And it allows for us to make sure that we have the implant in the best position for the patient, the safest position, and of course, the best position for long-term success, which we find so important. So there's a lot of different tools and techniques that where we use digital dentistry to provide better patient care, safer care, and more predictable outcomes. What we've found is that 3D printing, although it's one of the newer versions of manufacturing technology available to us, it has grown rapidly in the dental field of digital dentistry. And it's really allowed for us to improve the services and just the process of how we produce for our patients. With that, I thank you all very much. I know that we said that we'd be open for some questions. So if anyone has any, I'd be more than happy to share whatever information I can share.